Hi there guys. What I've got to show you today is a Zastava or Zastiva 7.62 by 39 bolt action rifle, and the model number is a LK-M85, and they advertise this as being a mini Mauser action, which it is very similar to. 4-shot magazine, wood stock, 20-inch barrel, open sights with a walnut stock, pressed in checkering it appears to be. We've got sling swivels front and rear, more press checkering on the pistol grip, rear sling swivel. Going around the back, we've got a fairly thick rubber recoil pad, a fairly firm one, although it doesn't really matter much on this caliber because it doesn't kick too much. The stock on this particular example is fairly dark. I've seen them quite light as well, a little more attractive with the dark walnut as opposed to the light stuff. Kind of unusual, got a little bit of a scallop here to the stock. It's repeated on the other side as well. Trigger is grooved. We've got a button here to release the floor plate, since this is a dropping floor plate, which is kind of handy for unloading your rifle. Moving up to the top, we've got a 2-position safety. Fire is forward and safe is rear. Quite a small bolt handle. I'm not sure why they went with such an abbreviated size of bolt handle, but that's what they put on this. Having a look at the top, we've got a very Mauser looking rear receiver area. Our bolt release on the left hand side. The rifle is drilled and tapped for scope bases. Got a very Mauser looking bolt shroud at the back, which provides pretty good protection from any blowback from a ruptured primer. Just flip the rifle around a bit here, and you can see the maker's mark on the side there, Zastava or Zastiva, I'm not sure the correct pronunciation, Serbia. The caliber, 7.62 by 39, the ubiquitous AK-47 SKS round, probably the most prevalent rifle round in the world after the 22 long rifle. And you can see a little bit more of the stock work. Got a cheek piece on this side, the Monte Carlo rollover cheek piece. Very comfortable stock, adult sized. And the grip cap has got a separate piece of walnut on top of that. Kind of a nice touch. The finish on this rifle is sort of a semi-gloss. Not the best applied finish in the world. It's too bad they didn't do an oil finish rather than this varnish or whatever it is. The inletting is not super duper. You can see rather unevenly inlet for the bolt release. And my rifle arrived with a ding in the stock right out of the box because the packing job was not all that wonderful. So looking down the top of the rifle, you can see the sights. Our rear sight is a U-notch. We can get the camera to focus here. There we go. So we've got a U-notch which has, you can turn it over and get a slightly different profile from the other side of that plate that moves up and down. And you can lift that plate up and down to adjust for elevation to some degree. You can see there's a graduated scale on the side there to give you something to index from. For some strange reason they used Phillips headed screws, which is rather a poor idea. Anyway, the sight is kind of a standard sporting type of sight. It doesn't give you the best picture in the world in my opinion, but it's not bad. It'd be a good sort of a snap shooting sight. And it does fold forward flat to help the sight clear any scope that you might have mounted. We have a 20-inch barrel, polished blued steel, tapered, sporter profile, and we've got a ramp type sight base which is grooved at the front for helping cut down on glare. You can see we've got a bead style of sight with a hood over it, and unfortunately the hood is very low. The hood needs to be probably 50% higher than it is to clear the sight. It gives you a rather cluttered sight picture. And if we look around at the front, you can see that the barrel is of a fairly light profile compared to the bore. So the whole rifle weighs 6 pounds as you see it here. Altogether a very comfortable stock, very handy rifle, comes to the shoulder quickly, and the sights align quickly. Those iron sights just seem to be exactly there when you put the rifle up to your shoulder. Trigger pull on this one is pretty good. Moderate weight. I don't have a trigger pull gauge, but there's very little creep or over travel. Breaks crisply. I would guess it's probably 5 or 6 pounds. These are adjustable triggers. Having a look at the bottom metal, you can see that the action is held in with these Allen screws fore and aft, which is not a bad idea. And we've got this hinged floor plate, and the button here lets the floor plate drop, which makes it easy to unload the magazine without having to cycle the rounds through the chamber, which is a nice safety feature. The bolt handle is one bone of contention I would have with the rifle. The bolt knob and the bolt handle. It's a very small knob. It should be probably 50% bigger than it is, and maybe a little bit longer. Makes the action a little bit clunky to operate. And for some strange reason, they've knurled the bottom side of it, which is not a great idea, because every time you cycle it you get your hands scuffed on that. The bolt comes out in the standard Mauser type fashion. Move the lever over, pull the bolt to the rear. The bolt itself is somewhat Mauser-like, but not completely. You can see we've got 2 forward locking lugs here, which would be a very standard Mauser type feature. The left one is slotted for the ejector, which is the Mauser style again. One thing that's not Mauser style is the extractor. It's a rotating extractor rather than the claw type extractor of most Mausers, and this is a push feed action. You can see that the cartridge is completely surrounded by the bolt ring here. So the cartridge doesn't come up underneath the extractor, which of course really doesn't matter much in this case because the extractor is this fixed type rotating extractor. What would appear at first glance to be the extractor on a 98 Mauser is actually this guide rib, and it actually rotates around. There's another feature on this bolt which actually acts as a guide as well. You can see this groove here in the guide rib, and also this groove in the bolt. So when the bolt is open, these ribs line up together and they match this groove. Get the thing to focus here. There we go. There's a groove here that those made up with, and that acts as a guide on the right hand side of the receiver, and of course your bolt lug acts as a guide on the raceway on the left hand side of the receiver. And probably can't see in there very well, but sort of a standard Mauser style receiver. Bolt goes in and rotates top and bottom to lock into the receiver, the barrel being threaded into the receiver. And at the back, once again, looks like a Mauser. And we've got our sporter type safety. I'll put the bolt back in here in a second. I'll show you the bolt a little bit more. You can see the back end of the bolt, very Mauser style bolt shroud. And I haven't actually taken this bolt apart yet, but I expect it would come apart in the standard Mauser style because it's got the plunger there on the side. Good beefy, a good beefy sear right here on the striker, I should say. Good big beefy part, that should hold up well. And we have, to act as a safety lug, we don't have the third lug like a 98 Mauser would have, but we've got the root of the bolt handle which actually locks into this cutout in the receiver. That acts as your safety lug in the event of the failure of your other two locking lugs. And if we can look up inside there, you might be able to see it. There's the bolt stop and the ejector. So that corresponds with that cutout in the left-hand side of the bolt to kick fired cases out. And we've got our machined floor plate and a V-spring type magazine spring, and that is very standard Mauser style. That's a nice feature. So this is a cock-on opening action. You raise the bolt handle up, moves the striker to the rear, and you can see the striker has moved back from its original position. Squeeze the trigger, striker goes ahead and fires the cartridge. With the rifle cocked, safety can be applied and the bolt can be worked for loading and unloading, which is a good safety feature. With the safety on, the trigger is locked, and it's very conveniently positioned with safety. Push it off with your thumb and you're ready to fire. This rifle uses an internal box magazine, sort of the traditional Mauser pattern. It'll hold 4 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. Now, you can almost get the 5th round into the magazine. However, it won't feed correctly. I'll just show you that the 5th one doesn't go all the way in. So it's best to put 4 rounds in the chamber, then just shove your 5th round into the chamber by hand. Hold the rounds in the magazine down so the bolt can pass over them, and close it. And that's probably the best way to load the rifle. If you want to unload, simply open the rifle up, take the round out of the chamber, and on the bottom of the trigger guard, or on the top of the trigger guard, we've got this button which releases the floor plate. You can see the floor plate is hinged at the front. So just push on that button and it pops open. And with that popped open, you can just dump the rounds out into your hand and line the follower back up and snap that shut, and you're good to go.